our reading strategy workshop. My name is Megan, and Sydney will be showing you a step-by-step process of the strategy shortly. Our literacy strategy is plot profiles. This strategy can be used from grade 3 all the way to grade 8. It is designed to help students understand conflict as well as the high points in a novel. The focus of this strategy is reading comprehension. It is designed to improve reading by aiding students in comprehending the conflicts in a chapter or sequences of chapter within a book. After reading and marking on their plot profile, students can write in their reading log and/or participate in a grand discussion, whichever the teacher decides best fits the lesson. In our demonstration, we will be using The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins to show you how this strategy looks in practice. Thank you, and enjoy our workshop.
Here is our step-by-step process for plot profiles. Students will work together as a class to create a plot profile as they read and discuss a novel guided by the teacher. First, the teacher will prepare a plot profile chart on chart paper to display in the classroom with a column for each chapter and 5 to 7 rows for the tension range. Also make sure small individual copies are made for each student. Next, the teacher and the students will read and discuss the first chapter of the book. This discussion should focus on the plot development and the tension in the chapter. Teachers may want to have students discuss the chapter in small groups before having them come together for a class discussion. Introduce the chart and explain that they will make a graph on the chart to examine how the author developed the plot. Together, the class will decide on the level of tension in the chapter. One student will mark the class chart and each student will mark their individual charts. The process of reading, discussing, and marking the chart will be repeated for each chapter. After students finish reading the story and graphing the tension on their chart, they will have a grand conversation to discuss how the author developed the plot of the story. Teachers encourage students to think about the impact of the character's motivation on the conflict and story events. Students write reflections about the story's plot development in their reading logs, or they write an essay to accompany their completed plot profiles.
Hello, class. Take out your books and let's read and talk about part 1 of The Hunger Games. On your desks are your individual plot profiles, similar to the one I have on my chart paper. Can everyone please make sure that their name is on theirs and put your thumb up once you've done that? Perfect. Now let's read chapter 9 of The Hunger Games to finish our plot profile. But before we begin reading, does anyone want to remind us of what happened in the last few chapters of our book?
Primrose gets chosen as a tribute in the Hunger Games, but then Katniss says, "I volunteer as tribute!" And then she's the one that gets to go to the Hunger Games and meets Peeta, who's also in District 12. And his dad's a baker, and Gale is really sad to see Katniss leave. But she trains and prepares, but sees that everyone is more prepared than her, and she retaliates against the game makers, and she's panicking. Well, things just don't look good for Katniss, Miss Baker.
I love your enthusiasm, Sydney. You really outlined the main points of conflict for us. Can anyone more specifically tell me where we left off in chapter 8?
She's mentally and internally panicking because she's afraid she set herself up for failure with the Game Masters. But they give her a score of 11, which is a very high score. This chapter has tension, Miss Baker, because at the end, Peeta asks Haymitch if he could be trained separately from Katniss.
Thank you, Sydney. Let's dive into the last chapter of part 1 of The Hunger Games, Betrayal. That's the first thing I feel, which is ludicrous. For there to be betrayal, there would have had to have first been trust between Peeta and me. And trust has not been part of the agreement. We're tributes. But the boy who risked a beating to give me bread, the one who'd steadied me in the chariot, who covered for me with the red-headed Avox girl, who insisted Haymitch know my hunting skills. Was there some part of me that couldn't help trusting him? On the other hand, I'm relieved that we can stop the pretense of being friends. Obviously, whatever thin connection we foolishly formed has been severed, and high time too. The games begin in 2 days, and trust will only be a thing of weakness. Whatever triggered Peta's decision, and I suspect it had to do with my outperforming of him in training, I should be nothing but grateful for it. Maybe he's finally accepted the fact that the sooner we openly acknowledge that we are enemies, the better. Good, I say. So what's the schedule? You'll each have 4 hours with Effie for presentation and 4 with me for content, says Hamish. You start with Effie, Katniss. Peta hesitates, then gives an unconvincing shake of his head. Handsome lad like you, there must be some special girl. Come on. What's her name? Says Caesar. Peta sighs. Well, there is this one girl I've had a crush on her ever since I can remember, but I'm pretty sure she didn't know I was alive until the reaping. Sounds of sympathy from the crowd, unrequited love they can relate to. She have another fellow? Asks Caesar. I don't know, but a lot of boys like her, says Peta. So here's what you do. You win, you go home. She can't turn you down then, says Caesar encouragingly. I don't think it's going to work out. Winning won't help in my case, says Peta. Why ever not, says Caesar mystified. Peta blushes beet red and stammers out, because she came here with me. In this chapter, where do you think the tension sat?
I think the tension was pretty high, Miss Baker. This chapter left me on the edge of my seat.
I agree. Let's mark that on our chart. Make sure you mark it on your chart too. Put your thumb in the air once yours is done. Let's put this in our reading log and document our thoughts and reflect on the chapter. What are the character motivations?
Effie's motivation is making Katniss look good, which connects to Hamish's motivation because he wants Katniss to be kind and not mean so that she can get sponsors and hopefully survive the Hunger Games.
Great! What about Peta's motivations?
We learned new things from Peta in Chapter 9 and found out he likes Katniss, which has to be some sort of strategy in the game for him.
Very good. Those are some great character motivations. How do these motivations relate to the plot and the conflict?
Well, we can see through foreshadowing that these motivations will impact how Katniss and Peta will act later in the book. We know the games are about to start, so we know this will be a big plot point that is impacted by these characters.
Awesome point. Great discussion, class.